Joe Tacopina, thank you so much for your time. You are the leading New York's criminal lawyer. I really appreciate that you made yourself available. If I can start with the first question, we have a little less than 50 days, until the U.S. presidential elections. While there are still pending cases against Donald Trump, how do you think it's influencing the big day for the America?
I don't think it's at this point it's having an effect at all. I mean, maybe some people will have trouble voting for a candidate that has a felony conviction and pending indictments, but it seems like that has it's taken a back seat to a lot of the important issues. He won't be sentenced before the the election. The other cases won't be resolved before the election, so I think that's sort of become a back burner issue. I don't think it's going to have that much impact on the election. Look, the people who are going to vote for Donald Trump and support him believe that those cases are the byproduct of abuse of the process, weaponization of the justice system. People who don't support Donald Trump are going to not support him, not only because he's been convicted of felonies, but because they won't support him anyway. So, it's not really, that's not one of the watershed factors in this election anymore.
But how about the undecided voters? Do you think it could still sway them?
Yeah, that's what you don't know. I mean, if you're an undecided voter and you're not a MAGA person and you're not a staunch Democrat, socialist, um, you could say, geez, do I want to vote into office a president that has 34 felony convictions as the United States president? And some people might have problems with that. Some might balk at that. So I think that's where there's a small pocket of people who might actually be affected by it. Um, at the end of the day, we seem to be numb in this country now to these circumstances. Rewind 10 years ago, if you had a president that was charged with a crime, that would be the end of his political campaign career. Um, if you had a president who had been accused of sexual assault, that would be the end. Um, it's different now, and we're in a different spot. And I think really the issues are going to be decided based on how these candidates present themselves. I think that debate was much more important than any of these pending cases.
There were also some sort of positive developments for Trump, like the hush money case was postponed for after the elections, the immunity ruling. How do you assess this? The other case was also postponed.
Yeah, I mean it's worked out in his favor. A year ago it looked like there was no way he was going to get out from under four indictments before this election, but he has. I mean, to a degree, he has. I mean, he's been convicted by a jury of 34 felony counts, but he won't be sentenced before the election. That's for sure. Um, and that could be good or bad for him. I mean, if he was going to be sentenced to no jail time, which I believe he will be, that really is the end of the case. Now the sentence is sort of looming over him. And it leaves voters with something to question as to whether their candidate of choice might wind up getting sentenced to jail after he's president. So, but the other cases, between the Georgia case imploding because of the ridiculous acts of the prosecutor there, who destroyed her own credibility in her own case, the Florida documents case, the judge dismissing that, and that's up on appeal, of course. The Washington case is still there, the January 6th case, but that's been in part affected by the Supreme Court ruling. So, it's things are not what they appeared to be a year ago, and honestly, they've become very much secondary to this election. As a matter of fact, we barely heard about it in the debate. Barely heard about it. So, if it were that strong of an issue for the Democrats, that would have been front and center.
Yeah, it seemed like Biden was more vocal about Trump being convicted felon, while Harris is took a step back. Would you see it same?
I mean, she did mention it, which she should have and had to, but it didn't dwell on it. There's nothing really to dwell on because, I think you want to focus on some of the other issues that Donald Trump um, has and some of the statements he's made and um, some maybe exaggerations of things that he said. So it's there. Everyone knows it's there. She said it, but no need to say it 20 times because you're only limited in what you can say in the debate, right? You have to use your time wisely. I think she did.
Uh-huh. And you already sort of mentioned it. Do you think the strongest case is still now the hush money case, or is it any other?
No, I don't think the strongest case, the hush money case, in the sense that there's already been conviction. But I don't think that's the case that's has the most dire consequences. I don't see him going to jail on that case. Obviously, I don't think anyone does. The strongest case is probably the January 6th case in federal court in Washington, D.C., with a judge who, you know, is, I don't think is a terrific fan of President Trump. Um, and that's going to be a tougher case once the dust settles, once we know what the case is,
Yeah.
because there's still some pending issues as to what is or what is not going to be, um, you know, before the jury. But once that proceeds down the road, I think that.
Did you watch the presidential debate between Harris and Trump? And would you think that Harris' legal experience and she was a prosecutor, how much does it help her with the elections or, people liking her more?
Look, any trial lawyer debating against any non-trial lawyer has an upper hand. I've tried 150 jury trials. I could debate against anybody very comfortably. Just give me a few hours to get comfortable with the subjects, and I'll go. Um, I think you saw that. You saw an experienced trial lawyer up there doing trial lawyer things, setting up the opponent, baiting the opponent. I mean, if he threw the bait, he took it. Mentioned crowd size being small and people leaving. That was it. Oof. And he lost topic. He went off topic and focused on how great his rallies are and how big his rallies are, and things that really didn't matter. Um, but she was good. She was cohesive, on point, sharp. Um, and look, it was night and day from the last debate, right? Where Joe Biden couldn't put a sentence together. She was impressive, and she was prepared. I will tell you, very well prepared. That impressed me the most. Um, Look, she was an administrator more than an in the courtroom trial lawyer every day, but still, if you have some trial experience, that's enough to give you um, the ability to be comfortable in a debate setting.
We also have Kennedy. Until now, he was the candidate and he was a lawyer, right? Environmental lawyer. So the two debating could be maybe more
I
interesting.
don't think so. I don't, Kennedy is. I don't have a lot to say about Kennedy. Not anything good anyway. But a guy who puts dead bears in Central Park and has conspiracy theories about almost everything in the world is not somebody I'm really focused on. But he's not a trial lawyer. I don't think he's ever tried a case. And being an environmental lawyer is not being a trial lawyer in a courtroom. So it's different. So just because someone's a lawyer doesn't mean they know how to be an orator, right? Someone who speaks well and persuasively, particularly before fact finders, right? And fact finders could be a judge, debate audience, or jury. Um, People you want to persuade. And so Kennedy's experience with that is non-existent. So I don't think that's going to be anything of significance. And plus, I don't think he has the debate forum. I don't even know what his role is. So
Yeah, I don't think he would be able at this point to debate either. But
no,
just a thought about the legal experience.
if you'd like, I would debate him. So you could offer that up to him, debate him on any one of his great themes and topics.
And if I can, last question on Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden pleaded guilty to surprise of many to 9 charges, and entered the room with Alford Clea. What do you think? What do you make of this step? Because it surprised many, involved in the case. They didn't expect it. And what's the future of his case?
Who knows? I will say one thing. We could, and I'm not a big fan of Joe Biden um, or his administration, but I will say this. I'll give them credit for one thing. For those people who say he controls the Justice Department, I think this situation with his son really puts that argument to bed. And what I mean by that is, if he were controlling his Justice Department, the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office, as the president, would he in any way, shape, or form let his own son get prosecuted? And they were prosecuting him vigorously. They did not give him breaks, and they wouldn't accept an Alfred plea from him, which means a plea of not admission of guilt, but just not contesting. They wouldn't accept that. They made him plead guilty to every count. I mean, there was no favors done, and that's the president's Justice Department prosecuting his own son. So when you hear things like, "Oh, the president is involved with the Justice Department, he's pulling the strings of the Justice Department," it's almost laughable to say that, because if that were the case, his own son wouldn't be getting prosecuted. Now, if this plays out in a way that it could play out, and he is sentenced before the end of Biden's reign, Joe Biden couldn't pardon him. The way everyone seems to pardon everybody. So that's a possibility. I think that remains to be seen. But look, he's committed some crimes, unprovided, and he's been called to account for them. And he got no favors from his dad, that's for sure. So the process is, at least in this regard, pure.
And was the Alford play a good step?
He didn't get the out. He wanted to do an Alford plea. An Alford plea is when you plead guilty by saying, "I'm not contesting the charges," not making an admission that you did it. You're just saying, "I'm not going to contest the charges," and that's an acceptance of guilt without acknowledging your guilt. The prosecutor would not accept an Alford plea. The judge wouldn't accept the Alford plea. He had to actually allocute to being guilty. He had to say, "I am guilty." So Alford plea would have been a good step, but it didn't work.
Okay, thank you so much for your
You're
time.
welcome.